Leaders are meeting in Berlin, Germany for the CWA conference taking place alongside the fourth G20 Investment Summit, co-hosted by the German government and German business associations. Earlier, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said Africa could count on Germany for early investment in the production of green hydrogen, which Europe's largest economy would need to import in large quantities in order to achieve carbon neutrality. He added that the Compact Africa Summit, holding alongside the summits, would send the signal that African countries could count on Germany as a partner.
In doing so and then discussing these topics is that I will continue to do so.
On the sidelines of the Germany-Africa Summit, Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yusuf Tugar, spoke with our London bureau chief, Juliana Olayinka, at the event. He says the whole idea of the summit is to open up Africa and allay fears of businesses with regards to political and financial risks.
It's very important because it's the compact with Africa is a G20 initiative, which initially consisted of 12 countries. Nigeria was not a part of it, but because of the personal rapport that has been struck by Chancellor Scholz and President Bola Tinubu, we're here today. Nigeria is participating in the discourse, and the whole idea is to open up Africa and to allay the fears of businesses with regards to political and financial risk. In the case of Nigeria, as you know, we've had a transition. We've transited from military rule in 1999 to democratic rule. We've had our system tested. We've had transitions from one individual to the other. We've had transitions from one political party to the other, and we've proved to be resilient. So, in terms of political risk, I'd say that is a thing of the past. What we're looking at addressing is financial risk. President Bola Tinubu comes from a private sector background. He understands the concerns of businesses, and he's willing to do whatever is possible to allay those fears and to de-risk investment, de-risk trade. And Nigeria happens to have so many sectoral funds that it could use, not to spend, but as credit risk guarantees, as insurance. So Nigeria has that unique advantage. So we're looking for partners like Germany to meet us halfway, to mitigate risk. And, business thrives, and the medium-sized family-owned businesses, the Mittelstands here in Germany, can invest in Nigeria and in Africa as a whole.
Joining us now is Foreign Affairs analyst Collins Nweke, who joins us from Brussels. Collins, now, this is the president's second foreign trip in a month, and it's been like this since he assumed power. He has embarked on shuttle diplomacy as Nigeria's #1 salesman. People in government will say these are not empty trips. The president is soliciting for foreign direct investment for the country, which you might argue either way. The question is this a strategy needed for the country at this time, given present economic realities?
The role of the president of any country, be it the political leader or, a monarch, is to be the #1 salesman of that country. So we can't make any mistake about that. But you see, if it is not driven purposefully, it will amount to nothing. I mean, in terms of the net gain to the country, rather, you will end up with a net loss for the country. And so those who are trying to evaluate, the frequent trip of President Ahmed Tinubu since becoming president, would have to look at, indeed, the preparations, but also the optic of the meeting itself. Now, from what we can see, it doesn't quite look like, these trips are, very well prepared. One way, very obvious way to make that assertion or to ascertain the extent of preparedness, it is indeed those on the entourage. As a matter of fact, you would expect to see both technocrats, intellectuals, academics, but also relevant government appointees by way of ministers that actually accompany him to the trip where, for instance, the focus is trade, or the focus is, for instance, power generation and so on and so forth. Now, we don't seem to have been seeing such people around Mr. President who will advise him because, he's not expected to know everything, and he shouldn't know everything, particularly the technical side of the business. So that is the first indication that it doesn't look like, these troops are well prepared. And like the saying goes, if you do not prepare well, you are actually, preparing yourself to fail. But of course, we can't rule anything out at this point because these are meant to be long-term, business meetings, of which the gestation period is expected to be, mid to long-term. So it could very well be that after some time, we might be proven wrong. But from the way things are going, these trips don't appear to be very well prepared.
So then what conditions are necessary for shuttle diplomacy to be deployed? We've seen it work before in Nigeria during the Obasanjo civil administration in the 1990s. He had to deploy that, given that Nigeria's standing in the international community was rather poor, thanks to years of military rule. Now, is it a plan that is necessary now?
Well, Susan, shuttle diplomacy is a verified, veritable tool of, foreign policy in terms of achieving a number of things, most importantly, international public relations for a country, but also activating very critical, investment into your country. But of course, for a country like Nigeria, with the current state of its economy, such shuttle diplomacy, as we have seen President Muhammadu Buhari done at the time, fewer than the current President Ahmed Tinubu, can indeed have some very downsides to it. For Nigeria, the potential drawback actually includes high cost. These trips don't come very cheap because what we see on television usually is the president. But the president is accompanied by, an entourage. In the case of President Tinubu, it has always been a very, very exhaustive, very robust entourage. These are people who have to be accommodated, who have to be fed, and who are to be paid extra quote, for their time away from, their offices in Abuja. So yes, and then I've not talked of the logistics and the rest of them. So these come very, very expensive at a time when Nigeria is actually borrowing money to be able to buy SUVs for the legislators. I mean, we are not talking of spending, from oil windfall and so on and so forth, spending from their reserves. No, Nigeria is actually borrowing to be able to buy such, and indeed even buy, cruise, ship for the president, or for presidential cruise ship, it was called. So these are very important issues to actually consider very well, and then, make your needs analysis such that upfront you will be able to know what the deliverables are for this shuttle diplomacy, and then, put them side by side the expenses that are being made. In the case of Nigeria, it doesn't look like, Nigeria is going to be making much out of this. And above all, you need to ask yourself and indeed be, very honest about all of this. Is this what Nigeria needs now? What are risk analysts talking about investment in Nigeria? Because it's not just about going out there, meeting with potential investors and, having handshakes, photo opportunities. You also have to look at investment conditions in Nigeria and, ask yourself the critical question: what are risk analysts out there? What are they advising their clients about in long-term investment in Nigeria? Yes, short-term investment, no problem. I think you will always get them more or less, some sort of trading. But critical long-term investment remains a challenge for Nigeria because the investment climate is very, very poor. So it is doubtful that the shuttle diplomacy that Mr. President is undertaking are, set to deliver tangible outcome for Nigeria in the coming years.
So, Mr. Nweke, let's look at promises made on some of the president's trips. When he went to the UAE, he announced a decision for both countries to renew visa policies, allowing Nigerian travelers back in the UAE after a few years of that service being restricted to a certain category of people. And just recently, Nigeria and Saudi Arabia agreed to billions of dollars in investment over the next 7 years. And the establishment also of the Nigeria-Saudi Business Council. And now, in Berlin, at the G20 CWA conference, he will be signing bilateral agreements with partners, heads of international organizations, deliberating on investment in critical areas such as energy, trade, and infrastructure, among others. There has been some gains. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, Susan, in regards to the trip to UAE, United Arab Emirates, and the aftermath of the meeting, I mean, the simplest that could be said is that, it was a shame. It was a shame that Nigeria went ahead to announce what they believe to be the deliverables of such trip, resumption of flights and then, visa issuance to Nigerians and so on and so forth. Not to talk of the size of the investment deals that, they purport to have signed. Not long after that, the Saudi government, after being quiet for a while, actually came out to debunk some of those claims. It's a shame. It's a shame, but one can only hope, not intending to hammer too much on that, that Nigeria would have learned a lesson from that. I heard the Minister of Foreign Affairs talk about the fact that, the relevant authorities in the future will be issuing relevant, pronouncements as a consequence of such trips. But the media people don't appear to have learned anything, in terms of lessons out of those. What we see here is a high level of, spin doctoring. Don't get me wrong. In politics, it is a tool, it is used, but it's got to be used responsibly. In this case, that has not happened. And, Nigeria has to be a bit more careful in that regards.
All right, that was Mr. Nweke. Now, over in the